I'm here. I have the flu, but Sun's Army, Darth Pascal is back with you this week to bring you a video I've wanted to do since the very beginning. Today, we will be covering Halo Combat Evolved and deciding if it's the greatest shooter of all time. Halo CE is unlike any other game we've done before. If you look at the other games we've done, most of them I haven't touched either since release, in 10 years, or when we did Black. Clap and I had never played that game before until we did that review. This is the only game so far that I've consistently played since its release when I was a young kid. I've played through the campaign many times, and as recent as less than a year ago, about 6 months ago, I played through it on Legendary. And I play the multiplayer through MCC about once a month. And so, although I have played this game a lot in the last week and the weeks prior preparing for this video, I haven't really stopped playing it either. And this is also the first video we're doing with a consistent formula. And so what I mean by that is we have three main categories. We'll start with single player, we'll move to multiplayer, and we'll finish the video off with legacy. And under each one of those, we'll have different subcategories that you'll see as we go along. And you'll see those throughout each one of the next videos we do. So every video we do will carry this new format as we go along. So without further ado, let's dive in to Halo CE. Is it the greatest shooter of all time? Let's find out. Obviously, we're going to start with single player, and underneath single player, we're going to start with atmosphere. And so the atmosphere of this game is one of the biggest reasons why it became so popular. Starting with the graphics at the time were groundbreaking. They were not only some of the best on console, but they were the best of the best, PC included. When you think about this, Perfect Dark was coming out a year before on N64, and that game looks completely different. So this generational jump was huge, and Halo was the best looking game at the time. The soundtrack is a big reason why it became popular as well. You have the opening crawl, the opening theme song was huge, and each of the songs within the game was unique in itself. So depending on what part of the level you were on or what level you were on, you might have a different sound or a different soundtrack to go with that level, and it evoked different levels of emotion. The sound is also amazing. Each vehicle, enemy, and gun sounds different and sounds unique. The character design, both Cortana and Master Chief, are very unique, all the way to Sergeant Johnson. In a game that didn't have a lot of polygons, they were able to make each character look very unique. And lastly, the environments were done extremely well. If you're on the library level with tons of flood coming at you, or you're on a Covenant dropship, each environment looked unique and evoked different emotions depending on what part of the levels you were on. So the game's atmosphere really brought you in and made you feel a part of this world, unlike any other game that was created to that point. So let's move on to story. The story in this game is relatively simple, and I wouldn't say derivative, but it's not necessarily the most original story you've ever heard. What makes the story amazing and stand out is the lore behind it. The Covenant, the Flood, the UNSC, all of that was very original lore that came in. There's not really one villain that you attach yourself to either. You have 343, Guilty Spark, but he's not really necessarily the villain. You know, he doesn't even come in till halfway through. So at the first half, you have the Covenant, and then the Flood, then 343. So there are great enemies, but there isn't necessarily a great villain. And I would say that that's a weakness of this game. But what does stand out is the lore behind UNSC, the Flood, and the Covenant. And so all three of those different factions really make the story a lot more engrossing. And the main thing that it brings you into the story is the relationship between Master Chief and Cortana. Okay, and now let's move on to gameplay. And gameplay is where we blur the lines between single player and multiplayer, because unlike some games where multiplayer and single player have very different gameplay, in Halo, and especially in Halo CE, the single player and multiplayer are interchangeable. The gameplay is almost identical. So let's start off with talking about the shooting. The shooting feels absolutely amazing. Even today, it holds up with shooters that are coming out right now. The movement, it does feel a little wonky. The jumping, the gravity makes it feel like you're almost in space with how you jump. It feels a little bit off, but it wasn't to the point where it annoyed me. The vehicles are where this game stands out, however. The vehicles are extremely unique, each one, and really brought in a new level of gameplay to first-person shooters. To this point, there wasn't really vehicle combat within shooters, and so the vehicles are a breath of fresh air even today. So jumping into a Scorpion or a Banshee, they still feel pretty good, if not a little wonky. It's still awesome to be able to fly around in these things. The controls feel great, the shooting feels great. The difficulty of this game, however, which is more of a single player aspect, was what really surprised me. I forgot how difficult this game is on Legendary. It's virtually impossible, if you haven't practiced Halo in a while, to jump in, go straight into Legendary by yourself, and expect to beat the game. It might take you 2 hours to beat a single mission, if not longer, because of how difficult this game really is. And so the last thing I want to touch on is mainly a multiplayer thing, but also is single player. The weapons and the weapon variety is really what made this game stand out today and stand out 19 years ago. The shotgun, the sniper, both unique and different variants of what we had seen before in those weapon categories. The Needler, a homing tracking gun, very unique. And then you have the plasma pistol, a gun that takes out shields. You had a lot of very unique guns, but the most unique gun was the pistol, the Magnum, the sniper pistol, if you will. Very unique gun that is the staple for this game. You need it in campaign, and you absolutely need it in multiplayer, and is the reason why people love the multiplayer, because the gun was so much fun to use. And so with that, we will wrap up gameplay, because the gameplay in this game is what made it so great, and it still holds up 19 years later. Okay, so let's move on to multiplayer exclusively. Now, the split screen in this is still as fun as it was 19 years ago. If you have 3 buddies and you can get people together, absolutely, this is the game you should play. Even if you've never played Halo before, or if you have played it and you haven't played it in 16, 17 years, invite some buddies over, have a few drinks, have a few laughs, and play on Blood Gulch. You will absolutely have a blast just having the time of your life. And if you could somehow get System Link, please send me a video of that, because that would be awesome to see. Online is different than what you would imagine, but it's still extremely fun to play Halo CE online through the MCC, Master Chief Collection. The game modes is where I found that there wasn't a lot of variety, but again, this was 19 years ago, so even having Capture the Flag was still a cool thing to have. But the one part the only real negative I had about this game was the maps. Halo CE is famous for really 2 maps, Beaver Creek or Battle Creek, I forget the name of it, and then you had Blood Gulch. But that was it. Those are the only 2 maps that it was really famous for. The rest of the maps are just okay. Some of them are good, some of them might even be great, but a lot of them, especially the big team maps, are just awful. And so the game is still great, but the maps left a little to be desired. But this is 19 years ago, so I wasn't expecting perfection. And then lastly, teamwork. Teamwork was so much fun to jump into a game with a few friends and talk to each other and strategize about how we were going to best do this for Halo. How to take this map on, where the power weapons were, where people were moving. It's so much more communication than shooters these days, especially Call of Duty. You have games like Apex or even PUBG or some of the Fortnite. There's a lot of communication that goes into battle royales, but if you look at Battlefield, Call of Duty, there's not a whole lot of communication that goes on. So it really was a breath of fresh air to go into a game where communication is so necessary. One quick thing I do want to talk about underneath multiplayer is co-op. So co-op underneath single player. This game is so much better to play with a friend, in my opinion. So if you play with one other person and you play through the game on whatever difficulty you play on, you will have a lot more fun. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of people like this game by themselves. They prefer these games to play by themselves, but I feel that the perfect way to play Halo, any Halo game, is to play through it co-op with just one other person and play through the entire game on Legendary, on Normal, Heroic, whatever difficulty you're playing on. You will absolutely have a blast, and that's how I feel the game was made to be played. And as we shift from single player to multiplayer and now to legacy, there is one thing I want to touch on. Halo is famous, and if you've played through these games, for its epic moments, and the epic moments still ring true. So right now you'll be seeing the Warthog run, and this Warthog run is still just as epic as it was 19 years ago. And so playing this today was so much fun. The amount of emotions evoked in this thing. Are we gonna make it? Are you not? I know we're gonna make it, but it's still so intense that it's so epic. And there are a lot of moments throughout this game like this, and there are a lot more in the sequels. So this game was not short on making it feel absolutely like a space epic. Okay, so let's talk about Halo's legacy. And you can't really talk about Halo without talking about the Xbox, and the Xbox without Halo, because Halo really established the Xbox brand. And in my opinion, I think the Xbox could have failed if it wasn't for Halo CE's success. You also have to talk about the impact on the genre. The genre of shooters, maybe not on PC, it didn't affect it too much, but on consoles, there really weren't console shooters. They weren't seen as a successful venture, so they weren't being made outside of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. So without Halo CE, do we have games like Killzone, Gears of War, Apex Legends even, Call of Duty? First-person shooters probably don't come to consoles if it's not for Halo CE, and if they do, it's probably a lot further down the road and in a different way. So we have Halo to thank for that. And then lastly, you have to look at the impact on other games that it's had in general. Not just the fact that it came to console, but you look at the way that vehicles are incorporated into games now. You look at health regeneration was not really a staple for first-person shooters. Halo was really original with that idea, and a lot of other things. You have the silent but not silent protagonist. Before that, the most protagonists were silent protagonists. And so to see Master Chief actually have lines of dialogue was very unique and original. And the relationship between him and Cortana was original too for storytelling. That's why they stand out so much in our head, because the legacy of that relationship together. And so when we look at this, has it had a huge impact culturally? Probably not, but I think it still has in some ways. I think a lot of times you have the word Halo thrown around with different ideas, or you talk about video games, people say, oh, I like Halo, I like Call of Duty. You know, it is part of our zeitgeist now, almost like Star Wars, but for gaming. So Halo is a big part of our world now, but it's not super culturally relevant like Star Wars or Marvel. And so overall, has Halo had a huge impact? Yes, absolutely. Has it had a huge impact outside of gaming? Maybe other than bringing non-gamers into gaming? Probably not. So will Halo CE's legacy be remembered forever though? Absolutely. It's in my top 10 games of all time, and it's also at the top of our list. So at our running list, we have Halo CE number 1, Call of Duty Modern Warfare number 2, Star Wars Republic Commando number 3, and Black number 4. And this list will only continue to grow. So what do you think? Do you think Halo CE deserves to be at the top of our list? Do you think that Halo CE is the greatest shooter of all time? If not, comment down below and tell us what you think is the greatest shooter, and tell us what game we should do soon. Next month, I'm planning on doing Titanfall 2, but if you have a better game for me to do, comment down below and let me know. Maybe we'll do it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, and if you like this video, hit like. It really helps us out a lot. I know you probably hear that everywhere on YouTube and probably anywhere. They tell you to like stuff, but it really does help us, and it makes my day when I see somebody likes this video. So go ahead and drop that like, hit subscribe, comment down below, and tune in next Monday where we go over my 6 personal favorite greatest sports games of all time. It'll be a great one. You won't want to miss it. Anyways, I'm Darth Pascal, and we'll see you next time.